Hello and welcome everyone to our Future Focus series today. Our guest today is Cameron Gowell, Funeral Director and Embalmer with Everest Funeral Home Services. This pathway covers health and human services. Please note that guests to our Zoom webinar will have view-only capabilities and do not have access to video or audio. Please use the chat feature to ask questions. And I will make sure to monitor and ensure that any questions that you have, we get some answers for you. And this session is being recorded so you can view at a later time on our YouTube channel. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen. And there you are, Cameron. Thank you for being here today.
Absolutely.
Great. And so tell us a little bit about what you do, your role at Everest, and kind of your title and what your duties might be.
Sure. So my official title is I'm manager and licensed funeral director. So besides managing the building here, I'm doing my day-to-day work, and we're meeting with families, and about 90% of what I do is with the living, not with the people who are dead. So my day to day is meeting with families and helping families. I'm helping them through um, the horrible time that they're going through. I'm doing everything I can to help them in the immediate need that they have. So that's kind of my role here. I do everything from embalming with people who have passed away, all the way down to ordering catering and food for services. So there's a vast array of things that we do from day to day for people.
Cameron, I think that's really interesting. And I'm glad you kind of mentioned that, because as we shared in the beginning, this pathway kind of covers health and human services. And not many people may know that. I mean, you're doing a little bit of event planning, you're doing a little bit of, checking with those families and helping them through this process and transition. But then on the embalming end, there is some health sciences that are involved with that. So I know I shared with you, I know someone that actually was in your role, and they went on to do something in the medical field because of some of that background that you have. So I find that extremely, extremely interested, and a needed service that we have in our community to help our families. So let's go back to when you were in middle school or high school. And did you ever think that you would be a funeral director and embalmer?
Well, yes and no. My father was a funeral director, so I grew up with it. Back there, it used to be a little bit different than what it is now, but they used to get up in the middle of the night, and they would have to do any work they did in the middle of the night or in the evening. So I remember going to work with my dad when I was young, and seeing different things. So I was really around it my entire life. I really don't know any a time when I first was around it. It was my entire life. So I always grew up knowing about it and things like that. My father did not push me into it at all. In fact, someone who's done something for 50 years can sometimes say, want something different for their children. But he ultimately brought me into the funeral home after I graduated high school, and I chose the path. I really enjoyed it at the time. But so to say, I guess I didn't see it as a path for myself when I was in middle school and high school. But also, I wasn't really looking for a path at the time too. So I think funeral service kind of found me. It was a good fit for me and a good fit for my personality. But I think it was more after high school before it really grabbed me.
Sure. And I think, that highlighting of those early experiences of you being exposed to it. And like you said, seeing that it was a good fit for you. So let me ask you, what aspects of this role do you find to be a good fit for you? And if somebody was looking to go into this, what would be some of the skills or things that would make it a good fit for someone else?
Sure. I think, which is a big misconception with funeral service, I think one of the biggest attributes that someone needs to have to go into this is they need to be uh, able to talk and communicate well with the living. We have this stigma that this job has to do with people who have died, or you're off and you're not out with people. You're in a corner somewhere, and that's just simply not it. Like I said, I think maybe at best 10% of what I do has to do with the people who have passed away. The rest of my day is communicating with people and helping people. So the biggest characteristic that you can have to get into this is simply wanting to help and being a good communicator with people, because that's what this job is. And really, I feel as though it can be a little more difficult than a lot of other jobs communicating with people, because you're communicating with people during a time that's one of the hardest times in their life. So that I think is the biggest asset that you can have, just wanting to be around people and communicating well. If you're an introverted person, this is not the field for you. Extroverts and people who are creative and want planning and that sort of thing. People who had thought about maybe being a wedding planner, this would be a wonderful job for them. So um, that that's what I would say is the most important characteristic.
Yeah, no, that those are really great things to know. And it seems to me when you bring up like somebody that wanted to be a wedding planner and talking with people, I would think that somebody that has great organizational skills, you know, great time management, would be assets as well, because those are things that you would definitely have in wedding planning and definitely you're going to have in um, funeral service planning, because it is an opportunity for loved ones to come together. And like you said, you're ordering food or you're ordering things to make sure that that is a pleasant event, memorable event for them all, in a positive way when
Mhm.
it is a harder circumstance for sure.
And
So
a good ability to listen to the people.
So that was good.
People will
I would
say
definitely
something
go with
about something
Thor
that the
because
person
that's
did
my
or loved,
wife's
and the
celebrity
ability to
crush.
take that and
So
move
I
that
wouldn't have
into
to,
something with their
hear that
service.
anymore.
You got to be creative and able to listen and able
I'm
to
sorry.
communicate.
Yes, I'm Stephen
Those are the
Pettifor.
good
I'm crew
characteristics to have.
specialist
yes,
serving
yes.
student
Good
body
listening
9 through
skills, I
12.
would think would be very, very important in that for sure. So let me go back, and when you talked about, you know, this kind of found you and you had some earlier experiences, what eventually influenced your decision to land with this career choice?
The initial part of it for me was being a young a young kid knowing something that the rest of the general population did not know about. So it made
Mm.
me feel very important being a young college age kid to be able to go and people say, well, what are you going into? And I say funeral service, and that was interesting to people. And I knew something that others didn't. That was my initial draw. That part of things wore off very quickly though, and but I remember that was memorable to me. But the next part that really drew me in is when I meet with people, they will remember me for the rest of their lives.
Mm.
Um, there's one of me, and I make such a impact on them that they will remember me for the rest of their lives. And that's where it really got to be a big deal to me, because I realized what an impact of what I do means to people's the rest of their lives. A funeral service can affect people negatively or positively for the rest of their lives. So that was what really brought me into this, and knowing that I really feel like I'm making a difference in individuals' lives. Maybe not as a community, but in individual lives, I feel like I'm really making a difference with people.
Yeah, that's a huge impact when you look at it through that lens of how that impact can be felt for a family during that time. So, what kind of uh, credentialing or schooling or training is needed to be in the role that you have?
Sure. Well, the state, as far as your credentials go, the state, each state in the country has a little bit different of what they want. In Michigan, they require 60 college credits. Now, I think about maybe 6 to 8 of those 60 college credits are specific courses, and they're vague specific courses, like a religions course, and the state does have that all laid out. But the rest of the 60 credits hours can be in uh, uh, they can be in basket weaving. They can really be in anything, but you have to have 60 credit hours, and then from there you have 1 year of mortuary college, and then you also have 1 year of an apprenticeship. So really, it does the whole process. You can get done in 3 years. You can do your apprenticeship while you're going to school. Yeah, but it's a 3 to 4 year program, all encompassing. But some of that's with an apprenticeship and things like that. What you learn here at what you learn to do your job 90% of it you'll learn here at the location doing the job that you're doing. Um, the school part of things just brings a whole practical part of it to it that you can kind of apply to what you've already learned. But the most of what we learn is right here at the funeral home.
That's great that they kind of incorporate an apprenticeship within that, because a lot of times apprenticeships allow you to take those skills or the practical knowledge that you've learned in college or training and really put it into practice, in a way that allows you still to have a mentor,
Yep.
so you can make that transition easier. So that's great to
I do
know.
want to touch. I want to say this though. I always have told anybody I've known to actually do their apprenticeship before they go to mortuary college, because once they
Mm,
get to mortuary college, they're going to find the schooling is that much easier. I have somebody here on staff right now that's going to school, but she's been working here in the funeral home for over a year, and she comes in and tells me all the time that, hey, they're teaching me this something I already know everything about it. So it I think it does help to try to work in a funeral home or have some prior knowledge before you go to mortuary school. And not only that, yes, I did say a small portion of our work has to deal with people who have passed away. I don't. It's probably not a good idea to just go off to mortuary school before you've been around that a little bit. So I always encourage everybody to try to do their apprenticeship while they're going to community college or doing those 60 credits before mortuary school.
No, that makes such good advice, because I think then they really get to see it in action before taking those final steps and making sure this is what they wanted to do. Because you want to make sure it's a good fit. You want to enjoy what you do, and you want to, especially, I would think in this career choice, you want to be well versed in it and know what you're getting into. So, when you go off to mortuary school, like we talked about, this is health and human services. Are there specific health science classes that you would take at mortuary school to help you prepare, for this role?
Yes. When I was in mortuary school, they taught us everything. We had accounting classes, we had business law classes, we had chemistry classes, anatomy classes, um, pathology. There's really a lot that we do have to know because, just as you said, there is some health aspect of this. We have to know the pathology, we have to know what we're working with, but there's also a very business oriented aspect of it too. The money exchange and paperwork and taxes and all of that's involved with it too. And then there's a legal side to it. So there's a vast array of topics you're going to. When I was in mortuary school, now I don't think they do this anymore, but they even taught like a moral and ethics class, because when we're
Oh,
setting up
wow.
luncheons and things like that, you have to know, proper way to do you have two forks on the right or one fork on the left? So they had to teach us some of that stuff. I don't know if they still do that or not, but they did when I was in school. So it,
Sure. No, I think that's great to know. You know, there's also this business aspect because you are running a business. I mean, you're managing this business. And so there's aspects of that. And even legal aspects of things you have to do when somebody passes or that the family may need to kind of finalize that process. And so it sounds like in some degree you're kind of a jack of a few trades
Yeah,
in that
absolutely.
aspect.
Yep, yep,
Yeah.
and there's also, crazy things that come up that we try to find a solution to. Um, and that was one of the things too that brought me in the beginning was I was able to work with these people who have been doing this for 40 years, and me who's only been around it for a couple months could say, "What about this?" And it was taken to heart because what we do every day is a little bit different, and sometimes
Yeah.
by the book is not always the right way. So, yeah, there's a lot of different things that we do, all kinds of stuff that we do.
Yeah, I find that um, pretty interesting. And I know even funeral service has even expanded, and I don't know how long this has been going on, but has even expanded to our family pets,
Mhm.
right?
Yep.
To where I know I have three pets and they're like my four-legged kids. And so there's an aspect of even involved with that I didn't even know existed until I had to go through that personally myself. Um, so is there, like, if somebody was interested in going into this field, are there entry level opportunities that they could begin seeing what that looks like, or working in a funeral home that then they could decide, oh yeah, I want to further go on with this? What would that look like?
Yeah, sometimes that's the hardest part is just getting your foot in the door somewhere. A lot of funeral homes are smaller, they're family owned, so that can sometimes be the hardest part. My father, when he started in funeral service, he would go down to the funeral home every Saturday for about 6 months and just hang out. They tried to kick him out, and he would still continue to hang out. And finally, after 6 months, they said, "Why don't we just give this kid a job?" So the hardest part is sometimes getting your foot in the door. But once you've got your foot in the door, um, there's a lot of entry level jobs. My first job at the funeral home was washing the cars. And that's where a lot of funeral directors start. They start by washing cars, running errands, um, standing by the door for visitation to greet people. There's plenty of entry level jobs that are out there with that, and quite honestly, even if you go to mortuary school, you got to start at an entry level place. So that's yeah, they're there. The hardest part is just getting your foot in the door, but um, the career aspects for funeral service right now are I think most people can, if they have some prior knowledge, they can walk into a funeral home and they'll get hired right away. So we need help, we need people, we need licensed people. So the career aspects on it are very, very, very good for funeral directors right now.
Yeah, I know you and I had talked about that prior to having this conversation. Um, that most of the time when people went into, even much like yourself, went into this role because they had family members. It was the family business, right?
Mhm. Yep.
But now that is changing. We might
Mhm.
not have those family members that are continuing on. So, you were sharing with me that the opportunities and the need for people in your role, or working within the funeral services is very great right now. Do you want
Very
to
great.
add anything more to that?
Yeah, I mean, we're so much in a need right now that there are funeral homes that are going to other funeral homes to try to steal employees. So that's how bad it has gotten. So yes, you have your license. You can pretty much pick wherever you want to live, and you know if you're a quality person can communicate well, you'll be able to find a job, no problem. And it pays very well. It's a good paying job, but we do work a lot of hours, so you got to be willing to work, and it's a really good career path if you enjoy those things that I've said. Um, if you don't enjoy those things that you said, it's going to be a miserable career path for you the whole way through. You really got to enjoy talking to people. But yeah, there's jobs all over for it right now, all over, everywhere. And
Yeah, no,
it's
I
been like that. I don't want you to think it's just because of as of recent where we've had this. This has been a growing thing for the last several years for us too.
Yeah, and I wonder if that is because, we have a higher population compared to generationally of younger people compared to our older people. Just like with nursing, just like with manufacturing, I'm sure this sector is no different. We have a lot of people that are retiring out,
Hmm.
and we don't have a lot of people going into those roles at the same rate of those that are retiring out.
Yeah.
So I'm sure that's the same case with that. So you were talking about hours and what that looks like. So let me ask you, what is a day in the life of Cameron look like? Like, when do you
Well,
start your day? When do you end your day? What does that look like?
it's a tricky question to answer. So, my normal day that I'm here in the office, I'm normally here from 9 to 4. Um, Yesterday I left early, but on the flip side to that, we didn't last night, but the night before, somebody had passed away at 3 o'clock in the morning. So somebody had to be up at night. We had to call the family. We had to find somebody to go to the nursing home. So we were working at that time. There are many times where I am here. If a family member says to me, we're just not around to meet during the day, can we sit with you at 6 o'clock at night? Okay, we'll do that. So, we are always available to people. So to say what my day looks like. Now today I didn't have any families I met. I'm here this morning. I'm doing odds and ends around the funeral home. So today will be a pretty simple day, but tomorrow I could be here till 10 o'clock at night. So the it very your day to day varies from day to day.
Yeah.
Some days you're working services, so you might have to come in a little bit early that day to get a couple things ready. But I mean, like I said yesterday, we didn't have a lot going, so I left here a little early. So
Yeah.
most funeral homes kind of do that, and it depends on just how busy things are and how many families you're helping at the time. Um, my day tomorrow, I'm going to come in the morning. I have a 10:30 appointment for somebody who passed away 3 or 4 days ago. So I'm going to sit down with them and we'll plan out what they're going to have for the service and things like that. Um, but some days I'm going from appointment to appointment to appointment, and other days I might only have one or two. So
Sure.
your stress level and how much workload you have is constantly up and down and up and down. That's
So
good.
that's good to know. The key is a lot of flexibility
Mhm.
in your schedule, and that can be a good thing or a bad thing depending on how that works for somebody in their home life, for sure. And I
Yeah.
suppose sometimes too, you have to because things get scheduled on weekends, you need to have
Mhm.
that flexibility too. Um, but sometimes that flexibility can be really good things.
And the
So
bigger the company, the better that flexibility seems to go too. So, your small funeral homes that in a really small town, there's only one funeral director that works there. So obviously he doesn't have as much flexibility because if somebody calls him on a Saturday, there's nobody else to go and help him. So your bigger funeral homes will afford you a little more time off and a little more flexibility with that too.
Oh, that is a really good point. So when we talk about your role, are there particular like, we know technology has, permeated almost every job sector. Is there a particular technology that is specific to your role? I mean, I'm sure you obviously use computers and things like that, but is
Sure.
there anything specific to your role?
Yes, every funeral home seems to have their own set of programs that they use, and they're very. I mean, I've used 3 or 4 in the course of my career that just help with all the information we have to gather, help with the scheduling of the service, and there's also a lot of record keeping for us too, and that helps with that. They're all a little bit different, but they all do the same thing. They all help keep track of everything. They keep track of our contracts for the money part of things. Um, They keep track of obituaries that we put on our websites and things like that. So there are programs that help us in our day to day of what we do, and every funeral home has a little bit different one they do, but they're all the same.
Sure, sure. And so, is there, obviously a lot of trends have changed in different job sectors. Do you see anything in the next coming years that is going to be a big change for what you do and how you do it?
Sure. Um, it's a for us, more and more people are being cremated. So it's a complete shift in what we do and in how we do it. When my father was in it, nobody was cremated. Nobody just wasn't heard of. So
Mhm.
we're constantly having to adjust to that cremation because it is substantially cheaper for people. Um, which makes our we still are a business. Even though we're here to help people, we still are a business, so that has shifted for us. And really what it's changed from is 40 years ago the embalming was a big deal. How somebody looked was a big deal. Now, if I'm lucky, maybe 20% of the people we are in a casket that are viewed. So that part of things is very, I don't want to say unimportant, but it's not nearly as important as what it used to be because we're just not doing it very often. So it going forward, the better funeral directors are going to be the ones that are better planners and organizers and essentially a party planner is what it
Yeah.
keeps shifting more and more and more and more and more in that direction. I'm visitation open houses or celebration of life open house is what I'm calling them because they're like an open house. And
Yeah.
so that's what it's gonna. I feel it's gonna continue going that way. Um, so yeah, that's it's gonna be
Yeah,
it's a
no, and
challenging way to work through.
yeah, and like you said, being very organized and having those skills in those areas are going to be really important. So if there is a middle school or high school student that is interested in this career path, what are some classes that you think that they would take in high school that could potentially align really, really well with going in this field?
You're I say to myself constantly, I wish I would have paid better attention in English class,
Okay.
because that is typing up obituaries, punctuation is a big deal. So that, if you have the opportunity to take a multi-religions class, that's important too. But a lot of what I do for my high school and middle school classes is just is it's really just again, I wish I would have paid more attention in English class because it's just your basic classes. I'm doing math all the time. It's not crazy algebra or anything like that, but it is math that I'm doing. So, you know, the way the program is set up, it's set up very well to take your high school courses that you learned and continue that on. But multi religions, English, um, when you get into your first couple years in college, I said, your anatomy, chemistry, those are good ones. I guess you had those in high school. So
Yeah,
those are
yeah.
things that are going to help you once you get to mortuary school. Um, you'll just be that much more prepared for it.
Awesome. Well, Cameron, we're just about winding out our time here. So the last question I have, and I ask this of all our guests that we have, if there was a particular nugget of wisdom that you would share with a middle school or high school student as they're thinking about their future career, what would that be?
Oh boy, now you that's um, just make sure. I would say, make sure it's something you really want and you're really driven and really passionate about it. You have an entire life you're going to be doing this job. And the other thing that I would say, and it's not that when I say this, I have, I love funeral work. I absolutely love my job, but I think it's important to have a backup plan for yourself as well. If I were to do it all over again, I would have gone and done a little bit more schooling That way, if something were to happen with this, I would have a backup plan. And my dad told me that when I was in school too. You got to get a bachelor's degree and then go to mortuary school. So that would probably be my biggest advice to people. Even though you only have 60 college credits, you have to do, get your bachelor's degree and then go tack on one more year of mortuary school, and then you have a good backup plan with it. So, um, yeah, I don't know if that answers the question, but I hope
No, it
that's
does. No, no, that is really, really good. I think the importance of that question is, our students that hear from different people from different walks of life and different careers, kind of like people that have seen there, done that. And like you said, gosh, I wish I would have, or this is something that you really are going to want to know. I think those are really important nuggets, and that's what we look for. So I appreciate that. So Cameron, I'm going to have you stay on while I sign off with everybody for just a few minutes. So thank you everybody for joining us for this Future Focus series. We're so appreciative and hope this was helpful in your career journey. And we look forward to you joining us next week for our next Future Focus series. And we'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.